Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Shamarie. I'll be doing the worst books that I've read in 2022. Before I get started, if you're new to this channel, please don't hesitate to subscribe down below as well as hit the notification bell. But this year, I only have 5 books on this list that made it to my worst books of this year, aka most disappointing, as well as some other reasons why I didn't really care too much about these books. So let's just get right into it. The first book I have on here is Once There Were Wolves by Charlotte McConaghy. By the way, these are all books I gave 1.5 to 2 stars, so basically just not really good ratings overall. This was supposed to be such a good book. I've heard so many rave reviews about it. People were talking about it, just raving about it. And I had picked this for a book club pick a while ago, and this was just not the read for all of us. None of us really understood what this book was about. None of us really liked it or enjoyed it. It was just not a good read. So this book basically follows a girl called Inti, where she is now in Scotland with her sister Aggie, and she's there to lead a team of biologists to somehow introduce these wolves back into the wilderness. But then a farmer is found dead, and people are starting to believe that it was one of her wolves that killed the farmer. And as the story progresses, you know, you find a lot about Inti and Aggie's history, their relationship together, just kind of the dynamics between them and the locals, and just a lot of different situations going on. At the end, I was very confused as to what was going on. I feel like most of the people at book club were also on the same page. So this was just a disappointing read because, like I said, we just heard so much about it. We were all very excited to read it, and it just did not live up to par. Next book on here is The Heart Principle by Helen Hoang. This book was also another very disappointing read. I absolutely adored the first 2 books in the series, so when I was jumping into this book, I was very ecstatic because obviously I had such high hopes for this author, for this writing, for the romance and everything, and this was just not it. This book basically follows a violinist, Anna, who basically becomes viral because of a YouTube video. But the thing is, after this video goes out, she now finds herself unable to continue on with her career, and she's just very burnt out. On top of that, her romance, her relationship with her boyfriend, the boyfriend decides to basically say, let's have an open relationship, because he wants to be with other girls. And so she decides to do the same. And then she meets a guy, his name is Quan, and you know, things kind of happen between the 2 of them. I felt like this relationship was just really weird to me. I don't know, I don't remember exactly what the events were or what happened or like what transpired between the 2 people, but I just always felt very disconnected with the romance, and I felt like this book was more about like grief than it was about the romance, which is fine, but I think this book was just very heavily labeled as a romance book, so I went in expecting a romance read, and that was not really the case. This case is more about the grief, about emotions, about just overcoming certain situations, and the romance really took a backseat for pretty much most of the book, that when it resurfaced, it was like, oh, you're back. You know, like I didn't know where you went kind of situation. So honestly, as a romance book, this was very disappointing. The next book I have on here is probably one that is controversial, but at the same time it shouldn't be, because I feel like the consensus online has been pretty much the same ever since this book came out, and that is Gallant by V.E. Schwab. This book, prior to being released, everyone was talking about it, everyone was very excited about it. It was by V.E. Schwab, I was excited for it, and then the book was released and people started reading it, and you know, ratings about it tanked. Okay, like just to be completely honest, I did not read or hear any very good things about this book after it was released. So imagine my shock when it won Best Book of the Year, I think for the YA category or something. I have to double check, but imagine my shock, because I'm like, this book was not very good. This book was such a disappointment. I don't know what was going on with this book. I feel like there's no plot, there was no reason for it, there was just, I don't know where this book was going, to be quite honest. And this book felt like it was a novella or supposed to be part of a bigger book. So I don't know, I was just very disappointed with this book. I just know this book follows a girl who somehow something happens, and she's now, I think she's like an orphanage, and she received some sort of letter from her like uncle or someone, and she goes off, finds out that she has family, and this family is somehow like has these like ghouls in her house, and then somehow it's like a portal that can go to a different land, and that land has someone who's trying to like get back into the real world, and like things kind of happen from there. It was weird. It was boring, it was weird. I don't know what the book was about. I don't know what the point of it was. And yeah, that was it. Like, it was just not a good read. The next book I have on here is The Lost Village by Camilla Sten. This is a horror book that I read for a reading vlog a couple while ago. I will link that above and down below in case you want to check that out. But this was a book that, I read that for the Magical Readathon. And okay, this was supposed to be a horror book that sounded so freaking good. It's about, it gave me like Roanoke vibes, where it's set in Europe, but you know, something happens and people go back to this village and no one's there anymore. And fast forward many years later, there's a group of like film crew who wants to go there and make a documentary of what happened and see if they can uncover anything. And people start to disappear and things start to happen. The premise sounded so good. Execution, unfortunately, not as much. And that's all I can say for this book, unfortunately. Then the last book on here is Jade Fire Gold by June C.L. Tan. This is a book I just read for my catching up reading vlog, where I'm just trying to catch up on all the 5-star predictions. Yes, you heard that right. This was supposed to be a 5-star prediction read, and this is actually my worst rated book of the entire year at 1.5 stars. It was, honestly, I had so much expectations for it because I just heard so many good things about it, and I did not like it. I felt like the romance in here was really stilted. I didn't even think that they were friends for pretty much most of the book. They were acquaintances at best, and then suddenly at the right end they're like, oh yeah, you guys are in love with each other, and I'm like, no, you're not. Like, you guys are not even friends, really. You guys barely tolerate each other's presence. I don't understand. I also felt like the pacing was incredibly off, and nothing really happened until the middle of the book. Like, the entire first half of the book was just like background noise, and from the premise it really seemed like things would happen right from the get-go, and that was not the case. There was a lot of build-up, a lot of background information, and some of them were important, yes, but I felt like a lot of it was just filler information that it just dragged on. So for my expectations and the execution of this book, that it did not match. And I just feel like sometimes like authors really need to like sometimes not force a romance into a book just because there is a stigma or like a formula where romances are always in YA books. That is not the case. It doesn't have to be that way, and I feel like some books are just better off without a romance in there, and I feel like this book could have been that because they really were not. There's no romantic inclinations between the two of them at all. That I don't know why suddenly they're like, oh yeah, we're in love. Like, no. So I wish authors will stop doing that, to be honest, because it's like kind of frustrating to read this as a reader and you're just forced to read about this romance when everything else is amazing, perhaps, and the romance just like tanked it for you. For this case though, I felt like there were a number of things besides the romance that just didn't do it for me, hence why I gave this book only 1.5 stars. So anyways, those are all the books that I read this year that was quite unfortunate for me. They were not worst books, they were mostly just disappointing books because I've had really high expectations, or I just heard so many good things about it and I was expecting a lot, and that was just not the case, which happens, unfortunately. Let me know down below which books did you read this past year that just did not live up to your expectations or were just some of the worst books that you read. Let me know all of it down below, but as always, if you like this video, please do give me a thumbs up. It really does help out my channel, and if you like to see more content of me, please don't hesitate to subscribe down below as well as the notification bell, and as always, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!